Assalamu alaikum. Today I'll discuss about the chapter 2 of Guyton, the cell and its functions. So each of the cells in a human being is a living structure that can survive for months or years, provided its surrounding fluids contain appropriate nutrients. Cells are the building block of the body, providing structure of the body's tissues and organs, ingesting nutrients and converting them to the energy, and performing specialized functions. So cells are the building blocks of the body. So if we want to define cell, it is the structure and functional unit of the human body or living beings. So it provides a structure of the body's tissues and organs, ingesting nutrients and converting them to energy, performing specialized functions. Cells also contain the body's hereditary code, that's mean genetic code, that's mean DNA. Organization of the cell, it has two major parts, nucleus and cytoplasm. The nucleus is separated from the cytoplasm by nuclear membrane, and the cytoplasm is separated from the surrounding fluids by a cell membrane, also called plasma membrane. So if we see, it is at first divided into nucleus and cytoplasm. Then in the cytoplasm, different organelles are suspended. The different substances that make up the cell are collectively called protoplasm. Different substances that make up the cell are collectively called protoplasm. Protoplasm is composed mainly of 5 basic substances: water, electrolyte, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. So, composition of cell, the structure of cell, if you asked or in the written or Bible, you will have to describe in detail. That is, it is divided into two parts, nucleus and cytoplasm. And in the cytoplasm, the fluid portion is called protoplasm. Protoplasm is composed of water, electrolyte, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. Water. Most cells, except for fat cell, are composed of mainly of water in a concentration of 70 to 85%. So water 70 to 80%. Many cellular chemicals are dissolved in the water, and some are suspended. Some are dissolved, some are suspended. Chemical reactions takes place among the dissolved chemicals or at the surfaces of the suspended particles or the membranes. There are different ions in a cell, of which most important ion is potassium, magnesium, phosphate, sulfate, bicarbonate, and small quantities of sodium, chloride, and calcium. This is ICF, intercellular fluid. And in the intercellular fluid, the most important ion is potassium. But in ECF, we discuss the most important ion is sodium. So potassium, magnesium, phosphate, sulfate, these are most abundant in the ICF. But in the ECF, most abundant substance sodium, chloride, calcium, and bicarbonate. These ions are all considered the interrelations between intercellular and extracellular fluids. The ions provide inorganic chemicals for cellular reactions and are necessary for the operation of some cellular control mechanism. These ions are necessary for different chemical or different operational procedure. For example, ions acting at the cell membrane are required for the transmission of electrochemical impulses in nerve and muscle fiber. Protein. Next important component of ICF or protoplasm is protein. After water, the most abundant substance in most cells are proteins, which normally constitute 10% to 20% of the cell mass. The proteins can be divided into two types, structural protein and functional protein. Remember it, structural proteins and functional proteins. The structural proteins are present in the cell mainly in the form of long filaments that are polymers of many individual protein molecules. So what is structural proteins are present in the cell mainly in the form of long filaments that are polymers of many individual protein molecules. A prominent use of this intracellular filament is to form microtubules. Microtubules. So, structural protein, example, microtubules. What are the functions of microtubules? It provides the site to skeleton of cellular organelles such as cilia, nerve axons, the mitotic spindles of cells undergoing mitosis, and a tangled mass of thin filamentous tubules that hold the parts of the cytoplasm and nucleoplasm together in their respective compartment. So microtubules provide the cytoskeleton of cellular organelles. Example, cilia, nerve axons, the mitotic spindles, the cells undergoing mitosis, the tangled mass of thin filamentous tubules that hold the parts of the cytoplasm and nucleoplasm together in the respective compartment. Another is fibrillar proteins. Another fibrillar proteins are found outside the cell, especially in the collagen and elastin fibers of the connective tissue and elsewhere, such as in the blood vessel walls, tendons, and ligaments. So, structural protein maintains the structure of the cell. Example, microtubules and fibrillar proteins. The functional proteins composed of combination of few molecules in globular form. These proteins are mainly the enzymes of the cell, and in contrast to fibrillar proteins are often mobile in the cellular plate. So functional proteins acts as enzymes. It maintains the function of the cell. Many of them are adherent to membranous structures inside the cell and catalyze specific intercellular chemical reactions. For example, chemical reactions that split glucose into its component parts and then combine this with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water while simultaneously providing energy for cellular function are all catalyzed. So functional proteins act as enzyme and catalyze the intercellular chemical reactions. And these are adherent to the membranous structure like ribosome, like Golgi apparatus, like mitochondria, etc. Lipids. Lipids are several types of substances that are grouped together because of their common property of being soluble in fat solvent. They're insoluble in water, soluble in fat solvent. Important lipids, phospholipid and cholesterol. Another is triglyceride. So name the lipids. Name the lipids. Say the lipids. Phospholipid, cholesterol, triglyceride. Phospholipid and cholesterol together constitute only about 2% of the total cell mass. Phospholipids and cholesterol are mainly insoluble in water and therefore are used to form the cell membrane and intercellular membrane barriers that separate the different cell compartments. In addition to phospholipid and cholesterol, some cell contains large quantities of triglycerides, also called neutral fat. What is neutral fat? Triglycerides. In fat cells, adipocytes are called fat cells. Triglycerides are triglycerides often accounts for as much as 95% of cell mass. So in the fat cell, Tg found 95%. The fat stored in these cells represent the body's main storehouse of energy-giving nutrients that can later be used. So what is the function? Function energy provide. It provides energy that can be later used to provide energy wherever it is needed in the body. Carbohydrate. Carbohydrates play a major role in cell nutrition and as part of glycoprotein molecule have a structural function. Glycoprotein, when it binds with protein, it is called glycoprotein. Most human cells do not maintain large stores of carbohydrates. The amount usually averages only about 1%, only 1% of their total mass, but increases to as much as 3% in the muscle cell and occasionally 6% to liver cells. So carbohydrate is stored in the liver cell as a glycogen, in the muscle cell as glycogen, but in the cell it is 1%. However, carbohydrate in the form of dissolved glucose is always present in the surrounding extracellular fluid. It is found in the extracellular fluid in dissolved state and readily available for the cell to form energy. A small amount of carbohydrate is stored in the cells as glycogen, an insoluble polymer of glucose that can be depolymerized and used rapidly to supply the cell's energy needs. So if we think, is carbohydrate soluble in water? The answer is yes. Give an example. The sugar, when given a glass of water and stirring, it is dissolved. But fat is not soluble in water. Give an example. If you give some oil in a glass of water, it will not be dissolved. Cell structure. The cell contains highly organized physical structures called intercellular organelles, which are critical for cell function. For example, without one of the organelles, the mitochondria, more than 95% of cell's energy released from nutrients would cease immediately. So, cell contains highly organized physical structures called intercellular organelles. Intracellular organs are very important for cellular function. One of the most important organelle, mitochondria, that maintain 95% of the cell's energy production. So, if you asked, say, the membranous structures of the cell, what you will say? These membranes include the cell membrane, nuclear membrane, membrane of the endoplasmic reticulum, membranes of the mitochondria, lysosome, Golgi apparatus. So what we will say? We will say nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, lysosome, and Golgi apparatus. These are membranous organelles. That means they have membrane. This is a structure of cell membrane, and we will discuss about it. The lipids in membranes provide a barrier that impedes movement of water and water-soluble substances from one cell compartment to another because water is not soluble in lipids. The lipids in the membranes provide a barrier that impedes movement of water and water-soluble substances from one cell compartment to another because water is not soluble in a lipid. What it what does it mean? In membrane provides a barrier, so it acts as a barrier and prevent movement of water-soluble substances freely from one cell compartment to another cell. However, protein molecules often penetrate all the way through the membrane. These are protein molecules that are penetrated through the cell wall membrane lipid, providing specialized pathways often organized into actual ports for passage of specific substances through the membrane. So these protein molecule penetrated through the cell membrane, it provides the water-soluble substances and lipid-insoluble substances to enter into the cell or to exit out the cell. Many other membrane proteins are enzymes. Some membrane proteins are enzymes like this. This is peripheral protein that attaches with the integral protein, and this acts as enzyme. Cell membrane, right? The membrane cell membrane structure. It is a question for retain and fiber. The cell membrane, also called the plasma membrane, envelopes the cell and is a thin, pliable, elastic structure, only 7.5 to 10 nanometers thick. Thickness 7.5 to 10 nanometers. You should remember it. Its another name is plasma membrane. It is composed almost entirely of proteins and lipids. The approximate composition is 55% protein, 25% phospholipid, 13% cholesterol, 4% other lipids, and 3% carbohydrate. So most of the component is protein, then phospholipid, then cholesterol, then other lipids. The cell membrane is a lipid bilayer that impedes penetration by water-soluble substances. So cell membrane is a lipid bilayer. Its basic structure is a lipid bilayer, which is a thin double-layered film of lipids, each layer only one molecule thick, that is continuous over the intercell surface, inter interspersed in the lipid film are large globular proteins. The basic lipid bilayer is composed of three main types of lipids: phospholipid, sphingolipid, and cholesterol. So this is very important to know. Lipid bilayer is composed of three main types of lipids. What are the lipids? Phospholipid, sphingolipid, and cholesterol. Phospholipids are the most abundant. This is phospholipid. Phospholipids are most abundant. One end of each phospholipid molecule is hydrophilic and soluble in water. The other end is hydrophobic and soluble only in fat. This is one end, this is one end. This is one end, this is one end. This end is water soluble, this end is water soluble, but this end is fat soluble. Most abundant cell membrane lipids, one end of each lipid molecule is hydrophilic and soluble in water. The other end is hydrophobic and soluble only in the fats. The phosphate end of the phospholipid is hydrophilic and the fatty acid portion is hydrophobic. Because the hydrophobic portion of the phospholipid molecules are repelled by water but are mutually attracted to one another, they have a natural tendency to attach to one another in the middle of the membrane. So, hydrophilic phosphate portion then constitute two surfaces of the complete cell membrane. Hydrophilic phosphate, hydrophilic portion constitute the two surfaces of the complete cell membrane. In contact with intercellular water on the inside of the membrane and extracellular water on the outside surface. So complete layer is formed by the hydrophilic portion and this is hydrophobic portion. The lipid layer in the middle of the membrane is impermeable to the usual water-soluble substances such as ions, glucose, and urea. Lipid layer in the middle. Lipid layer in the middle is impermeable to water-soluble substances like ions, glucose, and urea. Conversely, fat-soluble substances such as oxygen, carbon dioxide, alcohol can penetrate this portion of the membrane with ease. Sphingolipids derived from amino acid sphingosine, which have hydrophobic and hydrophilic groups and are present in the small amounts in the cell membrane, especially in the nerve cells. So, sphingolipids are present in the nerve cells. Complex sphingolipids in the cell membrane are thought to serve several functions, including protection from harmful environmental factors, signal transmission, adhesion sites for extracellular proteins. Cholesterol molecules in the membrane are also lipids because their stored nuclei are highly fat soluble. These molecules, in a sense, are dissolved in the bilayer of the membrane. They mainly help determine the degree of permeability of the bilayer water-soluble constituents of body fluid. Cholesterol controls much of the fluidity of the membrane as well. So, cholesterol molecules in the membrane are also lipid because their stored nuclei are highly fat soluble. Why this lipid? This is highly fat soluble. Its nucleus is steroid nucleus. What is the nucleus of cholesterol? Steroid nucleus. This steroid nucleus, fat soluble. Remember it. What are the functions? Determine the degree of permeability of the bilayer to water-soluble constituents of the body fluid. Controls much of the fluidity of the membrane as well. Next topic is integral and peripheral proteins. Integral and peripheral proteins. This figure shows the lipid bilayer and these are the integral proteins that penetrate from one part through the membrane to the another part. And the protein that attaches with the integral protein is called peripheral protein. Globular mass is floating in the lipid bilayer. These membrane proteins are mainly glycoproteins. There are two types of cell membrane proteins, integral protein and peripheral protein. So what are the proteins in the cell membrane? Integral proteins and peripheral protein. Many of these integral proteins provide structural channels. What are the functions of integral proteins? Provide structural channels or pores through which water molecules and water-soluble substances, especially ions, can diffuse between the extracellular and intercellular fluid. So it gives a channel for the water-soluble molecules to enter into the cell, like ions, carbohydrate, and other substances that are water-soluble. These protein channels also have selective properties that allow preferential diffusion of some substances over others. Next, it acts as carrier protein for transporting substances that otherwise would not penetrate lipid bilayer. It acts as a carrier protein. These carrier proteins are present in the active transport system, in which 3 sodium gets out from the cell and 2 potassium enters into the cell. Integral proteins can also serve as receptor. So three work: channel, transport, and receptor. Serve as receptors for water-soluble chemicals such as peptide hormones. Peptide hormones. They do not easily penetrate the cell membrane. Interaction of cell membrane receptors with specific ligands that bind to receptor causes conformational changes in the receptor protein. So, peptide hormones bind with the receptor and causes the cellular function. This process in turn enzymatically activates the intercellular part of the protein or induces the interactions between the receptor and proteins in the cell cytoplasm that acts as second messenger, relaying the signal from extracellular part of the receptor to the interior of the cell. What is second messenger? The hormone is the first messenger. When binds with receptor, it produces second messenger and different works are performed by the cell. Peripheral protein molecules are often attached to the integral proteins and they act as enzymes. So what are the functions of peripheral protein? The answer is simple. It's acts as enzyme. So next topic is membrane carbohydrate, the cell glycocalyx. Membrane carbohydrates occur almost invariably in combination with proteins or lipids in the form of glycoprotein or glycolipid. Glyco means carbohydrate, lipid means lipid. Glyco means carbohydrate. When binds with protein, it is called glycoprotein. When binds with lipid, it is called glycolipid. In fact, most of the integral proteins are glycoproteins. About 1/10 of the membrane lipid molecules are glycolipid. So most of the integral proteins are glycoproteins and some are glycolipids. The glycoportions of these molecules almost invariably protrude to the outside of the cell, dangling outward from the cell surface. Many of these carbohydrate compounds called proteoglycans, which are mainly carbohydrate bound to small protein coats, are loosely attached to the outer surface of the cell as well. Thus, the entire outside surface of the cell often has a loose carbohydrate coat called glycocalyx. This is carbohydrate. So these are glycocalyx. Glycocalyx, loosely connected. Many other carbohydrate compounds called proteoglycans, which are mainly carbohydrate bound small protein coats, are loosely attached to the outer surface of the cell as well. This thus the entire outside surface of the cell is called glycocalyx. Last minute. So we'll discuss the glycocalyx in the next topics. Thank you.